So just thank you so much for even doing this
pleasure.
and agreeing. I picked this topic because I knew that I could possibly interview you and maybe someone in therapeutic services that could kind of just give me some insight. So
Terrific.
I appreciate you sitting down with me. But
pleasure.
I know your time is limited, so we'll just kind of jump right into it.
Great.
And yeah. So from your position as executive director, how have you come to really define social emotional health in children?
Yeah, so the way that we tend to think about it is that sometimes hard to describe quality that makes people more successful. So you can really kind of break it down into someone who manages their emotions, communicates well, problem solves, can build relationships, set and achieve positive goals. So sort of those what are sometimes called soft skills, but actually they're more predictive of long-term success than any of the so-called hard skills.
Right, and so is this kind of a concrete definition, or it varies depending on who you ask?
Yes, good question. So the collaborative, it's called CASEL, and it's the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. They're sort of the standard setters in the realm of social emotional health, and they have a definition that breaks down into those sort of 5 main categories.
Okay, and so looking at that definition and kind of just the past research that Momentous Institute has been involved in, how would you kind of define what social emotional health would look like in college students?
Yeah, I think college is an interesting place for that to show up because people are having like new stressors and new experiences, new amount of freedom. So, you know, a lot of that stuff that's been baked in for you growing up really starts to show, or the lack of it.
Exactly.
Right? So the things that I think college kids, where you would really see it, is how are they doing on self-regulating? Right? So can they manage their emotions? Can they manage the stress? If things start getting too hard, can they navigate that, and do they have some skills that help them kind of take it back to baseline? So that self-regulation is key.
Big part.
And you know your friends who have it down and the ones who don't, right? Like, it's so obvious. And then the kind of second tier, I think, would be an awareness of self. Like who in that space in those college years is really tracking on who they are as a person and really building out those self skills. And then the next one is that space of understanding others. Right? So first, can I control myself? Second, am I aware of myself? And third, can I understand others? Really build those relationships, have empathy, take someone else's perspective, that kind of stuff. And then sort of the end game is when college students are arriving into that space of being an integrated influencer. And that's when you are so clear about who you are and so comfortable in your own skin that you are focused on contributing.
Right.
You know, it's not all about you. You're really thinking about, who am I in this bigger space, and how do I make a difference?
And I think you really hit on stress, and I think that's a big thing that I found just in this small little survey that I did. I had an open-ended question and asking them, you know, what causes you to feel like you're emotionally, you know, breaking down, and so much of it was stress. Stress from homework, stress from peers. Some even put like, not spouse, but like boyfriend, girlfriend, you know, so I think that's a really big component of it. And so here at Momentous School, you know, and Momentous Institute, you work a lot with children and such. And so how do you see that, or how do they suffer when they're lacking in social emotional health?
The kids that are here.
Right.
It's interesting, is it's very connected to the experience that your friends and the people who filled out your survey spoke to, because we're trying to bake in those coping strategies very early so that when the kids are in college they can access them easy. But the way that they're impacted when they don't have strong social emotional health is they, you know, like a metaphor would be, if you have an alarm going off in your brain, but it's all the time, all day long. So that fight, flight, or freeze that we need if we're being chased by a tiger or we need to stop in traffic real fast, that same physiological response is actually going on all day long.
Okay.
So you can imagine the difficulties in learning and building relationships when you're just thinking about survival. And that's what we find with kids that are dealing with trauma, abuse, or toxic stress that comes with living in poverty. And it's really getting in the way of their learning.
And I'm glad you said this. That was my next question. You know, how specifically is their learning affected?
Yeah. You know, a lot of people trying to solve for education problems right now are being kind of one-arrowed about it. You know, they're throwing the one arrow of academic rigor. Like, let's throw more academic rigor at it. The problem is that if a child is too stressed, then they can't access their prefrontal cortex. So they're all amygdala. The more primitive part of their brain is in charge. And when we're all amygdala, then we can't focus on learning. So it literally interrupts their ability to learn and progress.
Yeah, and I know from just kind of being around and working here just the few weeks that I have that you do teach kids about their brains, and that way they can kind of have a visual to control that. What are some other tactics that you've used?
Yeah, so the teaching kids about their brains is the first and huge one, because once they think about it like a biological issue and not like a I'm damaged or broken or a problem, no, it's not that, my amygdala's in charge, then they can figure out, okay, well, what strategies am I going to use to be in charge as opposed to having my amygdala be in charge, right? And so the first and foremost one that we focus on is teaching them to use their breath as an anchor in times of stress. So 3 times a day we stop class and just let the kids breathe, settle back into their skin, get ready for learning. And we teach them like the difference between that shallow breath and the deep belly breath.
Right.
You know, and there's lots of ways we do that depending on where they are developmentally, but that's a big one. Some other key ways we come at it are emphasizing social emotional skills and being explicit about it. So, you know, rather than just saying hope you're a good person, you really break that down. Like, what does gratitude look like? What does optimism look like? What does kindness look like?
So
and
defining these things you're throwing at them.
Really defining them and then building it into the curriculum. So instead of counting jelly beans and graphing that, let's graph acts of kindness or breaths and the different breathing you do depending on your activity level, whatever it is. Really bake it in.
Yeah, and so would you feel comfortable saying, you know, that some of these tactics could be transferred over to college-age students?
For sure. Like I think, you know, just that understanding of that there is a physiological response when stress hits me, and I have to develop skills to create that beat in between what happens to me and my response.
Right.
Too many people are walking around going, this happens to me, and I just react.
Right.
And I don't know, it's my personality or whatever. Well, that's really wrong. Like, actually, this happens to you, then you have to develop skills to create that space where there's a beat. And that involves breathing, focusing your attention, really kind of settling your brain so you can then access the more thinking part of the brain to develop your response. So, you know, if ever there was a time to really be able to manage yourself and manage impulse control and prioritize relationships, it's college, right? I mean, you know, I think your peers, you and your peers who focus on that and prioritize that are going to do the best, are going to make the best decisions, and are going to be the most hireable.
And what do you think would be the best way in implementing that? Like, I've taken a psych class, you know, so I kind of know the amygdala and some of that. But a lot of students, although they have that opportunity, don't take that opportunity. So do you think maybe like a semester-long seminar or I don't know, incorporating it into classwork? You know, what do you think would be the best way?
That's a great question. You know, there's the deep dive, but there's getting people's interest peaked first, right? So I almost think some kind of semi-party tricky things to just get people thinking are a good way to start, like the glitter ball. Do you want me to show the glitter ball?
Actually, yes, that'd be awesome.
Okay, let me grab my handy glitter ball. But you know, like this concept would be perfect for college, and so teach it, kind of talking amongst yourselves and the college peers about this is a model of your brain, and that when your amygdala is in charge, you're overly emotional, that your brain literally looks like this. So you can picture yourself and your friends in class trying to learn physics.
All over the place.
Right. You're trying to learn physics and you just broke up with your girlfriend or boyfriend and this is how you feel. Well, the physics doesn't get in, right? So then figuring out how to breathe and focus your attention, settle your glitter, then you can see clearly and make good decisions.
Right.
It's always important though to note that the glitter's still there, like the problem is still there. You have to deal with it. It's not magic, but this is what it looks like when you're in charge, and this is what it looks like when your amygdala's in charge. So, you know, kind of introducing some fun concepts like that, like a Settle Your Glitter campaign across the campus would be fun. And then I think opportunities to breathe. Like if there's an appetite for some just basic meditation groups that people can opt into. There's so much science behind what a difference maker it is for people just to build stillness and breath into their lives. And I think the college age group is real open to that. So creating opportunities for that, I think, would make a difference.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna go start buying glitter balls for everyone.
That's good. And we're doing the app, which will be ready in April. So college kids can just put the Settle Your Glitter app on their iPads or on their phones and start practicing that. Yeah, start shaking that and practicing that good breathing.
You know, and one thing I found in my survey is, and I only had about like 60 responses or so, but it was in a day. I was actually really surprised that I got 60. You know, 65% of them said that they had never even heard the phrase or the term social emotional health. And so I know that was probably something you've had to combat and still are combating, you know, within the Dallas area. So what are some ways that you've spread awareness about that?
Yeah, that's true, because it's a little bit of lingo. Social emotional health is kind of a catch-all phrase and a little bit lingo-y. But I think once you unpack it a little, people are like, oh, well, of course I get that. It's, you know, being a good, solid person who people can count on, who's well-rounded. You know, there's other definitions that people are very familiar with. So we've had less problems raising awareness around it than we would have just a few years ago, because the research nationally is so hot right now around how predictive those skills are of long-term success. Where we've had a real important spot is in coming in with what are the applied strategies. That's where people are like, I have no clue. Like, I get that it matters, but what do I do to start building that?
So is the education field kind of starting, it really is starting to take on like the social emotional health
Big
aspect
time.
of it?
Yeah. There's huge awareness, two things. One, of how predictive it is of that long-term success, but the other of how no matter how hard they work on instruction, it's not moving the needle. And it's because there's too many kids sitting in classrooms in that fight, flight, or freeze mode.
Yeah, and you mentioned instruction, and that's something I really wanted to hit on, you know, having gone to college yourself and such. Do you think that professors kind of play a part in this social emotional health in the sense that they're overwhelming kids with the coursework they're giving them, or the assignments are so close? No.
Yeah, so interesting. You know, I think it depends on the college, it depends on the professor, it depends on lots of things. But most of what gets thrown at college kids is preparing them for real life.
Okay.
And so I'm more interested in how do you help people develop those internal mechanisms to manage no matter how stressful things get, they walk into the situation and go, oh, it's raining. Their peer might walk in and go, oh my God, thunderstorm.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's because of that internal world. So how do we help college kids develop that internal world that changes their relationship with the stress?
Okay, so just really learning to manage it is...
Yeah, learning to manage it and learning to, really changing your relationship with it. I have 2 daughters, and when they hit difficult times, the last thing on my mind, my first instinct is always, oh, I wish they weren't going through that.
Right.
But I know to push that instinct away, because actually you do want kids to go through hard stuff. And same with college. You want those tough professors. You want all those experiences, because that's when you go, I can handle that actually.
Right.
I didn't think I could, but I can. And now I'm ready for the next challenge.
Okay. That was a good answer. That was great. And I really have just kind of one last question for you that I kind of had skipped over is, young adults who are suffering, with social emotional health in college, do you think that that is a result of them having suffered as a child, or is it often that someone might get to college and it just is depleted? What's kind of that dynamic there, do you think?
That's a great question. And I think it's on a continuum, so there's sort of the just normal college bumps that if you're not going through it, in some ways something is amiss, because that's a little bit what college is for. You're supposed to go through some bumps, and that helps you develop. And then there's the serious mental health issues. So I don't want to be glib about this end of it.
Right.
Like for college kids who are really struggling with depression or anxiety, anything that's debilitating or getting in their way or actually scaring them or the people around them for their safety, then that's a whole nother thing. And kind of knowing when you're out of your depth in terms of just using strategies and you really need help. So that's that piece. But this other piece, all of our early experiences shape who we are. Good, bad, ugly, the whole thing, right? And college is a great time where you're sort of moving into that adult space where what happened to you in your early years is an important part of your story, but it doesn't have to define you.
Right.
Right? So it's this cool time when you get to go, okay, there's what happens to me, and there's the sense I make of it. And I can make the sense that I'm a victim, or that I've, been damaged somehow or whatever, or I can make the sense from the same experience that I'm incredibly strong, that I have courage, that I'm capable. You see what I mean? So college is such a juicy time for people to really start thinking, okay, I don't want to make excuses for whatever happened during my life.
Right.
It's important, but now I'm an adult, and what I do going forward is actually on me.
Yeah, it's such a defining time.
Such a defining time.
Yeah.
I wish I'd been more awake for it. Like, I loved college, but now looking back, I think, man, that's an incredible time. So that would be my encouragement for y'all, is just be as awake as possible to the magic of this time of your lives, and try to silence some of the gremlins and some of the talking voices and that are like, worry a lot about this or get consumed by that. That's normal, but man, you never get the college years back. They're really, really special. So whatever y'all can do to be fully present and absorb them and really use them to figure out who you are and how you're going to make this world a better place, that's incredible time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Do you have any other comments or questions for me?
No, great interview. You did a great job.
Thanks.
She did a great job.
Okay, well then we're done.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. You already have a glitter ball, right?